And here we are. We are live. We are live. So, everyone, welcome, welcome, welcome to Coach Talk. Before I introduce this young lady, I just want to say that I met Casey. We are last year. We are live. So, everyone, one second. Welcome, welcome, welcome to. Can you hear the feedback? Before
Yeah.
I introduce this young lady, I just want to say that I met Casey. Let's do this. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
So I met Casey last year in Austin at the Instructional Coaching Conference. And I was so amazed to meet her because it's always something to have your social media friends come to life. And I'm like, oh, we have Casey Watts. And we had a great time the first night we were there. And so I recently reached out to her because I know she has her podcast and she's going to talk all about it and other things later. But I really wanted her to be on the podcast because she has phenomenal things to share. When I attended her session in Austin last year, and she was talking about this clarity work, and my gadgets were clicking, and my mind was processing like, okay, I like this, and where can we go with this? And so since then, she has released a book, and I'm getting far too much into it. But let me start over. Welcome to Coach Talk. I am Melanie Matthews Calhoun, and I am happy that you are joining us today. Before we get into the more magnificent side of Casey, let me just introduce myself to those who might not know me, who might be viewing me for the first time. I am an educator and I am a cold stone educator. I love education. I have experienced it from many different perspectives, which was my goal as when I became an educator in 1997. It seems so long ago. So I've been in education for 26, 28 years in different capacities: instructional coaching, curriculum development, working locally, regionally, nationally. So I really do love what I do. I have three published books. The first one is Inside Instructional Coaching. The second one is The Formula 101 Must Have Forms for Instructional Coaches. And the third one is The Productive Coach, which is a habit tracking journal. The reason why I have those books is because I love to write. And that's why I have them. And I've been through some things as an instructional coach that I thought, okay, I know other coaches out here would love to see what I have. Working together, being in the field for so long, coming up with tools. That's another reason why I did it. I am the founder and creator and host of the Get Engaged Coaching Group, formerly the Mind Your Coaching Institute, which is now a 2-day live event. And it is this year 2025 in July 9th and 10th from 11 a.m. until 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I invite all of you to come. So, oh, and one more thing, I do have a hub that's called Coach Academy, and it has a lot of free tools for coaches. So there are free tools and there are other tools that you can use there. So if you haven't heard of it, there's a link in this YouTube atmosphere somewhere that has Coach Academy, and it'll take you right there. So without further ado, let me just introduce to you Casey Watts. She is a team leadership expert and the founder of Casey Watts Coaching and Consulting LLC. With over 20 years of experience as a classroom teacher, instructional coach, and district leader, she's seen how a lack of clarity, not effort, is what keeps teams stuck. Drawing from her time in schools and her own leadership journey, Casey created the Clarity Cycle framework to help leaders break through silos and build cohesive, purpose driven teams. She now speaks, coaches, and consults nationally, so make sure you see her, equipping educators with tools that lead to real alignment and lasting impact. Casey also hosts the Catching Up with Casey podcast, where she explores practical strategies for leading with clarity and intention. And without further ado, welcome, Casey.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Melanie, for having me on the show. I have to say, first of all, I love you for calling me a young lady. I
You
mean, that's just a compliment right there. So we don't even have to tell people my age. They can just make guesses.
That's right. Yeah,
As
yeah.
long as they guess like younger than, we'll go younger than 35. Maybe I could get away with that.
But you absolutely can, because I think that you have found at least a drop of the water from the fountain of youth. Because absolutely, we're gonna keep
All
that
right,
between
we'll go
us. A
with it.
lady never tells, right?
We'll go with it. I love it.
So I wanted to have you on because, again, when we met last year, I just really liked meeting you in person. Your workshop I thought was very useful. Your presentation style, your speaking, all of that was intriguing to me. And as we are all in this field together doing things here and there, it's kind of hard for us to catch up in the meantime,
Yeah.
So having this opportunity to speak with you this evening is really an honor, really. I appreciate my fellow colleagues because not only am I a leader, but I also always position myself as a learner. And so I'm eager and I'm ready to learn more from you tonight in our conversations that we're going to have. And before we get to the subject, we are going to actually, I have a question for you before we jump into this because, okay, we just talked about age. We're going to say you're under 35. And we're
It's a
just going
total
to
lie.
start with your story. So, what led you into the world of instructional coaching and leadership?
Yeah. Well, I will tell everyone, let me just be open and honest with you so you feel like you can trust me. I am not younger than 35. My actual age is in the 40s. That's what we'll go with, which is why I have 20 plus years of experience in education. But, I'm one of those people that has used the phrase I will never, and I've used it with lots of different things. So
Mhm,
I said I will never own a minivan. I will never be a soccer mom. I will not get married before I'm 26. Like
mhm,
all of these things that I've said I would never do, I have done every single one of them,
mhm,
including teaching. And I remember so vividly always telling my mom, like, who was in education, I said, I will never be a teacher. I don't like kids. I don't want to be a teacher, not my scene. And so I went into college trying to pursue a music degree.
mhm,
And after half a year, I didn't even get through half a year of that. I was like, this is intense. The school that I went
mhm,
to, it was
mhm.
like you eat, breathe, live music, but it was extreme. Like you're looking at the technicality behind music. And I
Yeah.
just wanted it to be a hobby. And so I found myself transitioning to a different major and I started
Mhm.
majoring in psychology. And when I got into majoring in psychology, I started realizing, oh my gosh, everything this psychology professor is talking about, I feel like I have. Like, oh my gosh, I must be schizophrenic, or oh my gosh, I like all of these things. So I was like,
All of
okay,
the characteristics fit you at the
yes,
time.
right. And so I was like, okay, maybe psychology is not the degree for me. And lo and behold, I decided I think I want to go into education. And I heard, from my mom, like, oh, I told you so, and all of
Mm,
those things. And so when I got into education, it's just, when
mhm,
something is right for you, it
mhm.
just kind of sparks your curiosity and you want to know more, you want to dig deeper. And that's what
Yeah.
I found myself doing. And when I went into teaching, I went through my first year of teaching. It was really a really
Mm.
trying year. And I was like, I'm getting out. I've got to find something else to
So
do.
what
And I
grade did you
couldn't,
teach? What grade was that?
I started teaching fourth grade.
Okay.
Fourth grade
Okay.
math and science. And it was, no one prepared, like you're not really prepared for your
Mm-hmm.
first year of teaching. And so it was hard. It was rough. And my husband and I ended up moving, and I went to another school. I couldn't find a job, outside of education. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll give it another year. And
Mm-hmm.
after that second year, I was done for. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
education became my life career, and I absolutely loved it. And I've taught several different grade levels. So
Mm-hmm.
I've taught everything from first grade to fifth grade. I've been an adjunct professor, instructional coach, academic coordinator. I've been an
Mm-hmm.
instructional specialist at the district level. And for so long, especially as a classroom teacher, I think I found myself wanting to climb the position ladder. Like I
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
always wanted to go to the next level, and that's just who I am as a high achiever.
Yeah.
But at
Mm-hmm,
some point, I realized, okay, I have to stop looking at climbing the ladder because eventually you get to the top of the ladder and there's nowhere else to go. So what if we like lay the ladder down and I just see it as a journey that I'm taking, and at each rung of the ladder, I'm learning more about who I am and I'm growing
mm-hmm,
skills in this position.
mm-hmm.
And that helped me to realize I'm not going after a position, I'm going after impact. And that's what led me to
Yeah.
speaking, writing, and consulting is just thinking about how am I going
Mm-hmm,
to make an impact. And I feel like the work of instructional coaching is what truly catapulted me
mm-hmm,
into the work that I do today. Just because
mm-hmm,
you get to experience adults and um, hear their stories and really get to know them on a personal level,
mm-hmm.
and it changes your perception.
It does. And I agree with you. Your journey is very similar to mine. When we start our careers, we have these trajectories where we will see ourselves in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. And like you, I saw myself climbing that ladder, but not all rungs on the ladder are meant for you. They weren't meant for me because or on certain wrongs, certain responsibilities and accountability and those things that for me didn't make me a more impactful person, whether that was
Right.
a teacher or a coach or an instructional specialist. Where was the impact? And I felt the most impact that I could make was in this zone here as an
Hmm.
instructional coach, as a teacher leader, as an instructional specialist. And I love it in this space,
Yeah.
because then I get a chance to meet others, I get a chance to work with others, I get a chance to influence schools and districts. And that's what's most meaningful because the higher up you, like you said, the higher up you go, it doesn't mean it is better. It's just that it's more red tape, it's more political, it's all of
Yep.
those things that that's not in my DNA. And so
Hmm.
I'll let those people who like that, all hats off to you. You have it.
Yep.
But I like it here. And so yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I 100% get where you're coming from.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you already told us what was the mindset shift moment in your journey. I like how you use the parallel of the ladder and climbing it and laying it down and just going the journey. That's a good one. So if you see on social media a meme or something that I created, I'm going to give you credit for that ladder.
Do it. Listen, I've been thinking about it for a while. I was like, God, I've got to write an article or something about
Yes.
this, but I just haven't
Mm-hmm.
gotten to it. But it's so true. I think the other mindset shift, and you might ask about this too, but when I was and I talked about how instructional coaching was the role that really, I think, catapulted me and being
Mm-hmm.
able to make a bigger impact. But one of the things that I've noticed in my starting in my role as an instructional coach is you're working, and I talk about this in the book, you're
Mm-hmm.
working in this intermundium, like this in between space between two
Mm-hmm.
worlds, and really you're working between multiple different worlds. But there's the teacher narrative and then there's the administrator narrative, and you're kind
Mm-hmm.
of stuck right there in the middle. You're hearing both sides. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so fascinating to me that I will hear, even in the work that, like the leadership coaching that I'm doing with schools across the nation, it's the same everywhere I go. I am working with administrators or instructional leadership teams who are saying, they're resistant. They're not getting on board. We've told them the expectations. They're still not following through. And then on
Mm-hmm.
the opposite end of that, I will work with their teacher teams and I will hear the teachers say, we have no idea what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so fascinating to hear both of those narratives. And it was that moment exactly that I
Mm-hmm.
was like, clarity is what we're lacking here. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what kind of spurred me to write the book is how can we create clarity that's going to bridge the gaps between the adults on
Mm-hmm.
the campus so that then we can bridge student learning gaps, because
Mhm.
those learning gaps are not going to close unless the adults are speaking the same language.
Mhm. And you're absolutely right, because think about it, and I know that everyone who might be listening have had this experience where you sit down with a team, a few people around you, and you kind of hash it out. You have like brainstorming sessions or think tanks, and this question always arises: what is something we can do better? And almost the number one answer is communication.
Yes.
And I think with that communication comes clarity.
Yep.
So this session this evening is about becoming a clarity driven coach and leader. And I'm so happy to have Casey here because she wrote all about it. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for you to tune in and listen to what she has to say, because that session that I went to last year in Austin was about clarity, and she has expounded on this. So, Casey, go ahead and tell us how that communication piece can be clarified through clarity.
Yeah. You know that all familiar phrase by Brene Brown, clear is kind, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
all know it. I think so many of us use it. I use it. And I can get behind it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's missing some things.
Mm-hmm.
Or let me say that it itself, what Brene Brown has said, is not missing anything, but our perception of it is missing some things.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we use the phrase, or we hear people using the phrase clear as kind, they're talking about the act of like communicating with their words. And we usually
Mm-hmm.
think about crucial or hard conversations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But clear as kind, in opposition to actually creating clarity, is that there's an action that has to come with it. So, what I
Mm-hmm.
talk about a lot in the book is we're going to bring action to clarity, or put clarity into action, because it's one thing to communicate verbally
Mm-hmm.
about things. But if you are not creating a really clear picture of where we are headed, why we're headed there, and
Mm-hmm.
exactly how we are going to get there, with some really specific feedback and systematic celebration along the way, then
Mm-hmm.
the two are separate, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where like initiatives or things that we say, what can we do better? Those things fall through because we're only communicating it verbally, but not putting
Mm-hmm.
action to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I created the Clarity Cycle framework,
Mm-hmm.
because I will never forget it. I write about this in the book. The origin story behind the Clarity Cycle framework is a kindergarten teacher came to me. She was in the process of getting her master's and getting certified as a principal. And she said, "So tell me about how you came in and got everyone on the same page. Like, how did you get everyone moving in the same direction?" And I just kind of flippantly said, "Well, I don't know. I mean, I just kind of like zoomed out a little bit to kind of see what's the big picture, and then zoomed in to or like to tell people exactly how to go about getting there."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Okay, but how?" So it was like so obvious that what I was saying made sense to me,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
she wanted explicitly the detailed steps of my thought processes and how I went about doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started writing out like what were the steps of getting everyone on the same page and moving in the same direction, or at
Mm-hmm.
least starting to speak the same language. And we kind of ended up, evolved into the Clarity Cycle framework, which is,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, audience, it is a 6-step cycle that
Mm-hmm.
leaders go through to create clarity building habits. So when I talk about the framework, yes, it is steps that you're going through, but each step is a specific habit that you're honing.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that this cycle of steps, you're not necessarily going in order all the time, but you can pull from the cycle depending on what kind of habit you're trying to build.
Mm-hmm.
So are you okay if I go through the 6 steps of this framework?
Absolutely. Please
Love it.
share.
Okay. So when you're looking at the Clarity Cycle framework, we start with an area of focus. And that area of focus, especially for anyone, but especially for instructional coaches, I could see this being so incredibly powerful in the way that you go about coaching and bridging the connection between the teachers on campus and the leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But you're looking at what is our campus's area of focus? What are the team's area of focus? And how does that fit underneath the district's vision and mission, or even the campus's mission and vision? A lot of campuses that I work with and take through the Clarity Cycle framework, they are trying to improve Tier 1 instruction. And so our area of focus is Tier 1 instruction. So the problem is, like, we're not seeing high quality Tier 1 instruction, which is why we're seeing so many students falling into Tiers 2 and 3, and it's overwhelming. So how do we navigate that? Well, we look at that area of focus and we analyze it. And I take people through a root cause analysis protocol, and they're thinking about why we're seeing such a significant issue, why we're seeing so many students in Tiers 2 and 3 and not enough in Tier 1. And then we decide, what are the goals? So step 2 is determining goals. We typically will have about 2 to 3 goals that our campus or teams are working toward. This is what's powerful for instructional coaches, because now instructional coaches, if you don't already have a focus when you're coaching people and you're kind of at a loss, it's like, oh my gosh, well, remember, our campus is focusing on this, and here are our 2 goals. Let's talk about where you are in regards to these goals and how I can support you in helping our campus move toward those goals. So we have the 2 goals, but we take it a step further, because if we are not helping our people to take ownership of these goals, then it's kind of all for naught. Like, it becomes that, hey, what can we do better? And then we don't really do too much about it. Or it becomes that pretty poster on the wall that nobody really looks at.
And so, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I
go
love
for it.
The term ownership.
Yes.
Because that's so different than buy-in.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I love that you said that. That is a big thing that I talk about in the book, is we're moving from buy-in and compliance to commitment. That's what we're trying to get to, is commitment. And if you have commitment, man, imagine what your PLCs will look like. It will shift your PLCs. It will shift your planning meetings. It will shift your faculty meetings, your coaching conversations. It's powerful. So in order to build ownership, I encourage instructional leadership teams, not necessarily just the administrators, but teams of people who are leading this work, to gain insight from stakeholders. And stakeholders are typically the teachers. So they are going on what I call listening tours. It's a term that I can't for the life of me. And if you guys out there listening to this and you know the origin of listening tours, would love for you to share it. But I first read about it from Sherry St. Clair. And when I talked to her, I was like, oh my gosh, and you created listening tours. She was like, no, I didn't, but it's great. And I was like, yes, it is. Let's just keep talking about it. So I've included it in my book as well. But I encourage people to go on listening tours. And when they go on listening tours, they're sharing with people the area of focus and the goals that they've developed. And then they're just asking questions and listening. And the question that they're asking, this is probably going to be so familiar to so many coaches if you've read any of Michael Bungay Staniers' work. The question is, what's on your mind about this area of focus and goals? And then you're taking all of that insight that you're gaining from people, and it's helping you to decide, what can we leverage as strengths to build on as we work toward these goals? And what are some other tiny baby steps that we need to put in place in order to help people reach the goals? And we're breaking them down into tiny steps so that we're not met with resistance. If we're just trying to jump into big things that are on this trajectory to reach the goals, then people are going to be overwhelmed and defeated by it. So we've gained insight. That's step 3. Step 4, so important. This is scripting the critical moves and casting vision, which is kind of what I just talked about. But you're taking all of that insight that you've gained and you're thinking, what are those minor steps? And then 5th and 6th step. So 5th step is what we miss all the time. And that is celebrating systematically and providing feedback regularly. We celebrate in really surface level ways like the sunshine cart or,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
jeans pass, or we're going to have a taco about it Tuesday. Like just those are great and they're great for climate and a positive
mm-hmm,
climate, but they don't do a whole lot to enforce the culture, a positive culture on your campus.
mm-hmm,
So when we're celebrating systematically and providing feedback regularly, it is directly tied to your area of focus and goals.
mm-hmm,
And then the final step of the clarity cycle framework is just to sustain progress. And we're
mm-hmm,
thinking, how do we hold ourselves accountable as instructional leaders to maintain progress across the year?
mm-hmm.
And those are the 6 steps. They're all like building habits of clarity driven
Mm-hmm.
leadership.
And what I like about these steps is that they seem doable. It doesn't feel overwhelming to me. What this feels like to me is, as you were saying, jumping into this, is that sometimes you said you had to back up and get that macro vision. Sometimes we only live in macro, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why we cannot gain clarity. And
Yep.
these steps here are perfect for gaining clarity because, like you said, it isn't always these big things, but these small things that we overlook because we still have our macro lenses on. And so,
Yes.
being able to slow down and focus, number one, slow down and focus on what it is integral for people to get a clearer view of what is supposed to be done, like that tier one instruction. I think that's a universal thing.
Yep.
That quality tier one instruction. Have you exhausted all of your materials? Have you implemented it with fidelity or integrity, whichever word you want to use? Have you done all of these things in tier one? Because if that tier one instruction was quality, then there wouldn't be as many kids in tiers two and three. But I
Yep.
like this cycle because it's doable. It doesn't feel overwhelming. And I think that when people can see, because I can see this, and I only wrote down like the first focus, number two is goal, number three is gain insight. And I can see how it's a progression to
Yep.
clarity.
Yeah.
And what we think is such a big thing can be as simple as this. I'm not going to say small, but as simple as this. Once we slow down and just focus and take a look at what we have in front of us.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard someone once say strategy is simple, and they moved on to talk about something else. And I was thinking, yeah, strategy is simple, but what about
Hmm.
clarity? And clarity is actually really complex. You can have all of the
Hmm.
strategy in the world, but unless you're pairing it with
Hmm.
clarity, then your strategy is going to remain stagnant
Hmm.
and fixed. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I love how you mentioned like simplifying it. And that is
Hmm.
what I aim to do in the book
Hmm.
is really simplify it for people.
Hmm.
We hear about SMART goals all the time, and there is value in all of that. But so often it becomes this very weighty, heavy thing where you're
Hmm.
documenting all of this stuff and you're spending so much time documenting and creating the strategy plan
Hmm.
that you don't even have time to think about, well, how are we actually going to reach this goal
Hmm.
that we're setting?
Hmm. It reminds me when you said about clarity being complex. I remember a long time ago, really learned the difference. You hear these words, you hear these terms, and you just in one ear and out the other. But this time when I heard these two words, it really made me sit in that space and think about it. There's a difference between being complex and complicated.
Mm,
And a lot of times we make things complicated because we have not taken the time to zoom in and focus on what we need to do. Some
yeah,
things can be complicated, like clarity. Communication. We think that talking is communication, but communicating is very involved. It involves everything, the gestures, the body language, the intonation, the rhythm of the sentence. All of that is communication. But when you're talking about clarity, that's something different. How
yep,
clear is that communication? Is it focused? Do you have a goal? All of these steps. And so I love that you broke that down and made it like into bite-sized chunks that people can easily digest.
Yep.
Because sometimes we see something again and it feels like it's way too much, but let's just focus on it. Let's just look at it. And sometimes people have to be taken through it very, very intentionally,
Yes.
taken through the steps. It has to be explained. You have to slow down for people to get the picture, for people to take ownership in what's going on so that it can be executed so that we can get those kids quality tier one instruction.
Yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. And how often, Melanie, have you noticed where we say there is a problem? Like we know
Hmm.
tier one instruction is a problem. And instead of really taking time to analyze it and ask the why questions,
Hmm.
we jump to how we're going to solve it. But we're not taking time to really unpack where the missing pieces are that we need
Hmm.
to address. And that's
Hmm.
another part of creating clarity is really getting clear on what exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
tier one is that's a monster, that's a
Hmm.
beast. We
Hmm.
got to figure out what part of the pig we want to eat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. When you were writing this book, or let me ask you in a different way. Now that you've written this book, what what is that thing in this book that still tugs at your heart? And I know it's probably the whole book, but what's that one thing that if nobody knows anything else or learns anything else from this book, what's the one thing they should learn from this book?
Oh, what a good question. My gut
Hmm.
says the gaining insight piece.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
when I'm taking people through the clarity cycle framework, this is the part of it that they appreciate most
Hmm.
because you don't know what your people are thinking until
Hmm.
you ask the questions. And
Hmm.
so many people, especially instructional leaders who have not gone through an instructional coaching training. And
Mm.
by the way, let me just insert this. Every leader should have coaching training.
And I'm
I
going to
don't,
echo that every leader should have coaching training.
yes, 100%, because otherwise, unless it comes naturally to you or you've
Hmm.
invested in yourself to become a coaching leader, then you don't know how to
Hmm.
navigate the right kinds of questions to ask to get your people to speak from a
Hmm.
place of transparency.
Hmm.
And that's what gaining insight does. That part of it that I write about in the book and I take people through, I model it when I go
Hmm.
onto campuses. And the reason I model it is because I want it's really two reasons, but number one, I want them to see the kinds of questions I'm asking and how I'm not reacting. I'm
Hmm.
just accepting and
Hmm.
listening and taking notes. But also,
Hmm.
sometimes people are, even with the instructional leaders present, they're a little bit more open and honest with me because they've not gone through that work with their leaders. So they don't
Hmm.
really know what to expect. And I just happen to be like this unbiased person that they
Hmm.
don't report to. I am not evaluative or anything. So,
Hmm.
um, with that said, I think sometimes I encourage instructional coaches to be the ones doing listening tours instead of administrators,
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
because there's a different relationship there.
Hmm.
Um, but so that is the piece that I feel like if I was going to tell you, do practice nothing but this, that would be the thing that I would say practice.
Hmm.
Um, and then I would say if I could choose a second thing that my heart is drawn toward, it is casting vision and scripting critical moves.
Okay.
Because, as I said earlier, gaining insight is one thing, but if you don't do anything with it, then
Hmm.
you're not really
Hmm.
accomplishing anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's true because it all ends up being what action do you take in order to get to where you need to go?
Yep.
As you said, gaining insight is one thing, but putting foot to the ground is another, and that's what you always want to do. Um, as I'm listening to you talk, gaining insight. Do you have any questions, any sample coaching questions in your book? Because you know, coaches love a question. You know, we do.
Yes, girl, and I've got it right here. So I have I'm gonna tell you a couple of these coaching questions, and they're
Okay.
probably gonna be so familiar to you, Melanie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I when I talk about gaining insight in the book, I have a whole section that's titled Questions That Level Up Feedback Meetings. And what I mean by feedback meetings is it could be like you're just having a one-on-one, or you're doing a group conversation, or having listening
Okay.
tours, whatever it might be. But I have four different coaching stems, and they're what, who, why, and how.
Mm-hmm.
And so a what question, I always start with a version of Michael Bungay Sr.'s What's on Your Mind About. And
Mm-hmm.
usually if you are trying to gain clarity or create clarity for people, it's what's on your mind about this area of focus and these goals that we have set.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another one that I really love is what is your understanding of this? Because that's another place where we lack clarity is we have the assumption that we all have the same pedagogy or philosophy or definition behind these very, very common terms. Tier
Mm-hmm.
one
Mm-hmm.
is an example of that. Like when
Mm-hmm.
I say high quality tier one instruction, I'm making assumptions that my staff has a very similar understanding
Mm-hmm.
of tier one instruction. Not the case. Not the case. We cannot
Mm-hmm.
bank on that. So I like to ask the question, what's your understanding of this? Who stands to benefit from this if we reach these
Mm-hmm.
goals? Or who should be leading this work? And
Mm-hmm.
in what way? Because that promotes the ownership piece. They're not going to say, you should be leading this work. Hopefully, they're going to feel the urge to say, we should be leading this work. And then they're
Mm-hmm.
able to start thinking, oh my gosh, well, how, if I'm saying that we're going to lead it, what is my role in that? A why question is, why is this relevant to our school? You know, how
Mm-hmm.
often do you hear people get frustrated with the initiatives or goals that we have in place? It's
Mm-hmm.
because they don't know the relevance behind it.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been told that. And then a how question is, how would this look if implemented well?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's another buy-in
That's
piece. Like if we're,
that forward thinking.
yes,
How does this future look? The question before that, that why question is, I need to know the purpose. I need to know
yes,
the benefit. You know, so these are all important. And I'm glad that you put those questions in your book because sometimes, and I've been guilty of this. I'm not perfect, y'all. I'm not perfect.
really?
But just jumping into the work and adults not knowing the why. You
Yeah,
know, that's that adult learning principle. So you have
yes,
to know the why. And if you're thinking about the Lippitt-Noster model of questions of change management, that's the first thing, the why. And
yeah,
so they have to know the why. And that last how or what would it look like, that's like one of my favorite things because what it does to me is it disarms all of the angst and anxieties that's currently living in that space,
yeah,
and it gets the person or people to thinking about what does this beautiful new future look like. And so
yes.
I love, 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 love that question. I'm so glad you included that.
Yeah, yeah. What you're saying reminds me of another part of the book. I talk about in the vision casting piece, I talk
Hmm.
about the vision curve. And it's
Hmm.
like you're casting the vision, but people have to conceive of the vision before they can catch the vision. And we want them to catch the vision so that they can be the vision carriers. So we want them to carry the vision, but they
Hmm.
can't do that if they can't even conceive of it. So really
Hmm.
painting that picture is so important.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's more helpful for them to paint the picture in their own mind.
Hmm.
And that question does it.
And it's powerful. I mean, that's
Yep.
really powerful because that's one of the 20 brain-based learning strategies is visualization. And in order for people to be able to see themselves in it, they have to
Yeah.
visualize that. They have to use visualization. So that's powerful. This just is a book full of powerful pieces.
Well,
It's a
thank
book
you.
of powerful pieces. I
Uh,
see a puzzle. Look, I'm visualizing a
yeah, you are.
puzzle
Yeah.
with your 6 steps and how each one is needed to make the other one even more strong than the last one. I'm seeing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I love it. See, you're the visualization person I need. I also tell people I need a metaphor and analogy coach because I'm terrible at them. It's bad. Like I try really hard and whoo,
Look,
it's
your
rough.
journey is like a ladder, though.
Well, okay, that's one thing. But usually it's like, yeah, it's like a ship on the road and it's what? No, that doesn't work. Oh
You know
gosh.
what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
Work
yeah.
with me, work with me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, it's terrible.
So again, I love the concept of your book. I love how you have those questions in there because this book sounds like it's for coaches of all stages, new coaches. If you've been in it for about 5 years, veteran coaches, I see every coach having this tool in their hands because there's something in it to benefit everyone. And
Yeah.
so if you don't have it, I'm urging you to pick it up. I'm urging you to get it, especially now as of this recording, we're entering a new school year. So you'll already have it available for you in the new school year. And if you're looking at this recording months from now, still get it because it's applicable wherever you are in your school year.
Yep.
So you need this. I think this is a valuable tool for you to have in your toolbox because it takes you through the steps. It's a perfect guide, your guide by your side. It's a perfect guide for your coaching life. So yeah, I just did a whole commercial.
Yeah,
Um,
you did. I'll take it.
did a whole commercial. So I have, I love the book. Is there anything else you want to say before we go off into our speed round about your
Ooh.
book? Where can they find it? Where can they pick it up?
Yeah, Amazon is the best place to
Mm-hmm.
find the book. If you want a signed copy, reach out to me. Usually, when I work with teams to go through the Clarity Cycle framework, that is part of what they get is a copy of the book. So, yeah, and I would say also just go to the website, catchingupwithkacey.com, and you'll see all the ways that I work with people to gain and create clarity.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that. And we're going to circle back around at the end to make sure people heard what you said. But let's do
Yes.
a lightning round. I love lightning rounds because it's just I'm just captivated sometimes about people's answers. And
Okay.
if they are similar to mine. So there are five. There are a couple that you might have to think a little longer, and that's fine. So the first one is coffee or tea while coaching.
Coffee always.
Okay.
Yep.
Walkthroughs or planning meetings? What's your favorite and why?
Planning meetings, 100%. I love working with teams. It's my
Hmm.
I like coaching teams more than I like coaching individual
Hmm.
teachers.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I don't know why. There's just something about
I
the
think it's the
collaboration.
synergy. Yeah,
Oh, for sure. For sure.
synergy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's your go-to hype song before a tough coaching conversation?
Ooh,
I
it's got to be appropriate. Okay. Um, I'm gonna say just because it's like a song that really energizes me and makes me want to dance, and so I get all the feels. Is Bruno Mars, the "Marry Me" song, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
All
think I want to
right,
marry
all
you.
right.
I don't
I
know.
wasn't expecting that. That's a good one.
Yeah,
One word that describes your coaching style or leadership style.
relatable. Yeah,
What's your coaching superpower?
listening and questioning.
Mm,
Yeah, I
mm,
and here's what's interesting about that. I am a like hyper listener, if that's even a thing. And I
mm-hmm,
think it stems from some of my pet peeves, like when people are on their phone or distracted, it
mm-hmm,
irks me because I'm like, you don't know the message that you're sending to the people that are talking to you. And I just am hyper aware of those things. So I
mm-hmm,
get so involved in listening that I ignore everything around me.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
I would say that's a superpower, but it's born of pet peeves.
That is a superpower because especially when you are listening to not respond, how we're supposed to in coaching, having those listening set asides. So I think part of that, in addition, and I'm not a therapist or whatever, but I think a part of that is you having the ability to listen and setting aside all of those other thoughts. I think that's sort of a skill and a talent in addition to it being a pet peeve
Yeah,
because it's difficult for people to listen that intently
right.
without having the urge to respond.
Yes.
And then you pair that with the questioning piece.
Yeah,
That's the perfect marriage, being able to listen and then having those follow-up questions without having the need to insert a suggestion or a recommendation, just
right.
purely coaching to mediate thinking. That's
Yeah,
that's that's a skill. It's a
I'll
skill.
take it.
So we are winding down, and I don't like to go, but I can't keep my guests forever because I know we have things to do. But before we leave, what is one message you wish every instructional coach or leader could hear loud and clear?
Mm. I'm probably going to resort back to what they've already heard in this podcast, and that's okay. You're just going to hear it again, is that strategy is simple, clarity is
Mhm,
complex, and you can simplify clarity, but it's going to take more than just the act of verbal communication. We
mhm.
want to put clarity into action because clarity will always precede capacity.
Period. I like the way that ended. So tell them where they can catch up with you, Cassie.
All right, so you guys can catch up with me actually on my website, catchingupwithcasey.com. You can also find me, like my handle on all the social media platforms, but specifically LinkedIn is Catch Up with Casey. So I just imagine that we are catching up over a cup of coffee, and that's how you're always going to remember my website and my social media handles.
And her podcast.
And my podcast, yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Casey, for coming and hanging out with me today on Coach Talk. I appreciate you being here. And we're going to catch up real soon when we meet
Yes.
in Austin. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in. And if you have any questions for Casey, please, please feel free to reach out to her. She'll be looking forward to those questions. Follow her on all her social media handles because she really puts out some good stuff. And be the best coach that you can be. Don't try to be anyone else. Be your authentic coaching self. And that way you will be the best that you can be. Until next time, have a good evening, and I'll see you later. Bye.
We still, woohoo!
I can't get it off.